When LSU traveled to Florida on September 8, 1984, they entered as clear underdogs, in no small part due to the excellence of Florida quarterback Kerwin Bell. Bell was a true rarity. He was a walk-on freshman who somehow got the nod to start at quarterback from coach Charlie Pell. Every observer predicted that Florida would win this game, especially considering how poorly LSU played in 1983. LSU's 1983 season is really one of those bizarre seasons. I mean, the team looks really bad on paper, but if you look closely at the games, you'll see that there were a lot of signs of success to come. LSU started 1983 ranked 13th in the nation and had a young quarterback named Jeff Wickersham who was quite impressive. Wickersham led LSU to a comeback against number 12 Florida State to start the 1983 season, and he came just short in the end. LSU's offense was actually pretty good, but the defense gave up ridiculous plays like this one with about a minute left against Florida. In other words, even though LSU went 0-6 in the SEC and 4-7 overall in 1983, the team was better than the numbers would indicate. A number of those losses were close until LSU's defense gave out in the fourth quarter. LSU also pulled off a huge win over number 9 Washington early in 1983. As this newspaper preview indicates, LSU's offense in 1984 was really the stuff of legends. It was, honestly speaking, one of the greatest offensive teams that LSU has ever put together. The defense, of course, was a different story. So, on the one hand, you had Florida, a good team surrounded by controversy that suffered a close defeat to Miami the week before. And on the other hand, you had LSU, clear underdogs, but a team that was probably better than most people thought. Well, what we got out of it was actually one of the most important games in the entire 1984 college football season, and it's a game that, I might add, most people have forgotten about. We knew we were in for something special when the referee dropped the coin during the first coin toss. This was the first SEC game of 1984, at least as far as I am aware, so I guess they had an excuse, or something. Florida won the second toss and deferred, which meant that LSU chose to receive. And LSU came out with an inventive formation that gave them a first down on the very first play. Running back Gary James got a first down again for LSU here on second and short. As you can see, LSU had a run-based offense despite having a pretty good quarterback in Wickersham. This is a great game for those of you interested in unusual formations and counter runs. LSU used all sorts of tricks. And of course, they mixed up those tricks with a few runs straight up the gut. This is really good stuff for geeky guys like me who like to play with football simulators. Wickersham looked like he was going to march up the field. However, LSU started to lose momentum. And if you've been paying attention, you'll notice that LSU has used a different formation on almost every down, something that was really unusual in 1984. LSU had to settle for a 47-yard field goal attempt, but they missed it badly. However, there was a delay of game penalty against LSU on that kick that couldn't be declined. That meant that fourth down had to be replayed. Yeah, this is the first of numerous really odd referee decisions in this game. My understanding is that you actually can decline a delay of game penalty, though the ruling here was that they simply couldn't. But whatever, I mean, it was 40 years ago. That confusion was followed by one of the worst punts I've ever seen. And then Florida came out of the gates, headed by running back John L. Williams. This was a great game for those of you who enjoy watching running football. But don't forget about Kerwin Bell, who knew a thing or two about passing. Florida went straight through LSU's defense in the early going like it was nobody's business. Of course, it wasn't just about those 3 or 4 yard gains. Running frequently opened up passes like this. And then the play action was working for Florida. Then Bell scored a touchdown. He lost the ball at the end, but they said that he had already crossed the goal line. You be the judge. With Florida now up 7-0, LSU mysteriously decided to run this kickoff out of the end zone instead of downing it. Bad idea. Now, that's not the first time that we've seen this in 1984. I know that they wanted to have more kickoff returns, and that's something that we still talk about today. I mean, look at the recent changes to the NFL kickoff return rules. However, some of these decisions were simply ridiculous. Wickersham looked good, though, and LSU started to march again. LSU peppered his running game with occasional passes like this one to keep the defense honest. This, however, was disastrous. On the very next play, Bell found Ray McDonald for 43 yards, 14-0 Florida. Looks like a blowout, right? Well, just wait. LSU kept right on gobbling up 3 or 4 yards at a time. The Tigers also had a bit of good luck with 4th and short plays like this one. And then there were good runs after the catch like this one. Now, we don't talk much about Gary James, but he had a number of strong runs for LSU in this game. The same goes for Dayton Hilliard, who was a really tough guy to take down. Despite being down by 2 touchdowns and having some early glitches, LSU hung in there. However, Florida's defense hardened up when they got to the goal line. This was 3rd down and LSU still couldn't get in. And so they had Wickersham roll out. That made it 14-7. Like I said, this is a great game for those of us who are interested in play calling. There was a lot of running here to open up the passing game. Of course, with guys like John L. Williams, Florida absolutely should have run. And Kerwin Bell was pretty good, wasn't he? However, the Florida line wasn't always able to hold. After a Florida punt, LSU started to march on back. This was a fantastic pass by Wickersham. Unfortunately for LSU, this drive stalled. And this time LSU hit that field goal. That made it a 14-10 lead for Florida. And now we have the game. Check out this huge hit by LSU. After LSU took over, it was Florida's turn to lay on the herd. And then it was Ricky Eastman of Florida coming up with his key interception. Florida tried to hurry up the clock to make something happen before halftime. It looked actually like Florida might score again. Bell decided to run here to get the Gators in field goal range. They tried, but they missed. Lorenzo Hampton started off the 3rd quarter for Florida with this impressive run. Drive stalled, however, with a penalty and a series of incomplete passes. And that leads us to the worst punt return decision of all time. The officials ruled that he had enough forward progress to get to the 1-foot line. I'm not so sure about that. LSU then tried to power it up the middle in a ridiculous formation. Yeah, I'm not sure what was going on with the play calling there. Something was wrong. As expected, LSU's punt was almost blocked. But then there was a flag, 5 yards for running into the kicker, which was barely good enough for a 1st down. Wickersham started to march the field again. But the Florida defense got through and sacked him, forcing a 4th down. Then LSU's punter had yet another adventure out there. His awful punt was partially blocked. And then Bell came marching back. However, LSU's underrated defense was able to stop the run this time. And then came this key interception in the end zone. I told you this was a good game, and LSU just kept on hanging in there. LSU started out the next drive strong on the ground. Gary James was seriously a good runner. And all of that running opened things up for Wickersham. Now this is a great example of Wickersham's ability to improvise on the spot. However, Jeff did get into trouble from time to time. Check out this incredible catch by Eric Martin of LSU. And now LSU went back to nibbling 4 or 5 yards at a time. But then Ricky Eastman once again picked off another pass. Lorenzo Hampton came back to muscle his way forward. Now the momentum seemed to be with Florida. But then we had another interception, Mike Brooks picking off Kerwin Bell. Two plays later, Wickersham was picked off yet again, but it was out of bounds. They tried to pass again the very next play, and somehow Florida managed to not intercept this one. Well, like I've said before, the play calling here was pretty questionable. LSU had a lot of success focusing on the run and occasionally passing. But when they tried to do the opposite, to pass more often and then occasionally run, awful things happened. This led to another LSU field goal. It was now 14-13 Florida. Now, have you ever seen drive stats like this? They had 0 yards on a scoring drive. Florida elected to pass 3 straight downs and wound up having to punt. And now LSU started to drive the field again, down by only a single point. This running game is a thing of beauty, especially for those of us used to modern passing-focused games. LSU kept on moving forward 4 or 5 yards at a time. Wickersham looked good. And Gary James was able to pick up the yardage that they needed. Wickersham found James in the end zone with his pass to make it 19-14 LSU. Then LSU elected to go for 2, choosing to pass one more time. This was a great run after the catch. So now LSU suddenly had a 21-14 lead. It was now the 4th quarter. There was some time left though, and Florida weren't exactly pushovers. LSU elected for a squib kick. There was no call on the obvious late hit at the end of the play. I told you that the refs had a bad game. Now check out this second effort by John L. Anderson for Florida. And then it was Hampton taking over the game. Florida got one first down after another. However, Neil Anderson wound up fumbling on 3rd down here. Florida recovered but faced 4th and 4. So Florida decided to go back to Anderson again, and he got the first down right after fumbling. And then there was this big pass by Bell. That was followed up by Lorenzo Hampton finding this hole, which made it 21-20 LSU. So what do you do here? Do you go for 1 or 2? Well, these days you would absolutely go for 1 and worry about overtime. However, remember there was no overtime in 1984. Tie games were still a thing back then. So what would you do? Would you go for the win at home, or would you settle for the tie? Well, they went for 1, tying this game at 21. And now it's crunch time. Florida came up with a huge defensive play in a key moment here. However, it wasn't enough to stop LSU from driving. Gary James was quickly turning into Jeff Wickersham's favorite target. But Florida's defense held strong. Wickersham was in trouble here on 3rd and long, but he came close to getting the first down anyway. And then he completed this huge pass to Eric Martin on 4th and 4. Drive stalled after that sack, however. LSU had a chance to win it with this field goal, but it was another miss. And now it was Kerwin Bell time. Bell got this first down with 12 seconds left. It took an incredible 7 seconds for this play to end. And then came the final pass of the game. Time expired, and it was a tie. You know, tie games like this feel kind of empty, don't they? You sort of wish that they had some way to come up with a winner back then, but that's just the way that things were. But a tie it was. I'm glad to see that I'm not the only one who thinks that Charlie Pell should have gone for 2. Alright, spoiler alert, all of this tie especially becomes really important later on in the 1984 season. It's really likely that this game prevented Florida from seriously competing for the national championship in the end, but we'll talk about all of that later, so stay tuned.